Max is a German shepherd, a symbol of strength and loyalty, but for the past 6 years, he has been living in the shadows of neglect, in a forgotten corner of the shelter. Those years have passed like invisible winds, quietly blowing through, carrying with them the coldness of silent loneliness. When Max first arrived here, he was a young, healthy dog, full of energy. But after many long years of waiting, he has gradually grown old, his body no longer firm, and his eyes no longer gleaming with the excitement they once had. Every day, all he had left was one thing: unshakable patience. Each morning, as the first light of dawn gently filters through the small window, dispelling the dark veil of night, the shelter staff begin their usual routine. They open the cages, feed the dogs, clean the soiled areas, and continue with their tasks, as though everything were part of an unchanging habit. But amidst this scene, one dog is standing silently in its cage, not causing any noise, not being a nuisance, just quietly observing everyone walking by. That dog is Max. Max is not a vicious dog, nor a playful one trying to get attention. On the contrary, Max is always quiet, standing tall with his ears perked up, his eyes constantly following those who pass by. Whenever the staff walks by, Max never runs up to beg, never barks to attract attention, nor jumps up on the cage like the other dogs. Max simply stands there, his eyes silently pleading, hoping someone would stop, reach through the bars, stroke his fur, and speak a word of affection. But that moment never comes. Only hurried footsteps pass by, only fleeting glances, and no one stops. Day after day, month after month, Max continues to stand there, in his small cage, like a ghost in the shelter. The light of hope in his eyes slowly fades, but it never completely disappears. He understands that life is like this. Sometimes all one can do is wait and hope for some miracle to happen. But Max doesn't give up. He has never allowed himself to forget the one thing that we all seek in life: love. When people walk by, when they glance, Max does not react, never shakes the cage, or howls like the other dogs. He doesn't want to bother anyone, doesn't want to make them stop. He simply stands there, looking at them with deep, resilient eyes, as if to say, "I am here, I am still waiting." In some way, Max has learned patience. He has learned to wait for those who walk by without demanding anything. Just a glance, a word of encouragement, a stroke of his fur, everything would be enough for Max to feel that he is not forgotten. But in those 6 long years, that moment never came. Max doesn't have the antics, the chaotic moments. Each morning he just stands there, silently. But inside, he possesses a strength that no one can understand, a strength of tireless persistence. It is a different kind of hope, not a hasty hope, not a hope that seeks something permanent. It is a hope with depth, a hope that one day someone will see him, see the genuine love flowing in each breath of Max. Yet, Max continues to stand there, each day, each month, year after year. He doesn't bark, doesn't jump around, just the silence of patient endurance. But when the sun sets and night falls, Max returns to the darkness of his small cage, without a sound. However, every night, in his gentle sleep, he still dreams of the day when someone will look into his eyes, see the resilience and loyalty in them, extend a hand, open the cage, and take him home. While the world outside may forget his presence, Max continues to wait. Not because Max doesn't know sorrow, but because he believes that love can come at the most unexpected times. And no matter how many days pass, no matter how many long days stretch out, Max will still stand there, patiently, with the hope that someone will see him. Max's story is not just the story of a dog in a shelter. It is the story of patience, of loyalty that never fades, and of hope that never gives up. Because sometimes love doesn't come in a fleeting moment, but is the endurance of waiting for a long time. Max has taught us that even if the world turns its back, there are hearts that are patient, hearts that never give up. Each morning, as the light begins to creep through the small cracks of the shelter's windows, Max slowly gets up, as though his body has grown accustomed to each movement after so many years. His steps are no longer swift, his body tired, and his eyes no longer shine with the brightness they once had as a young dog. But the one thing that hasn't changed is his patience, the stillness that Max carries within. He continues to persist, still standing there, alone, in his cage, with the faint hope that someone will notice him. But that moment has never come. The volunteers and staff at the shelter, those who are familiar with each dog in the facility, feel a special sorrow for Max. They cannot help but notice how different Max is from the other dogs. Max is not a loud dog, not one who runs around or demands attention. He just stands quietly, his patient eyes gazing at them as though silently pleading for a kind glance. But each time they look away, Max returns to the darkness of his cage. There is a volunteer named Sarah who has worked at the shelter for 3 years, and she occasionally watches Max from afar. Sarah feels something that not everyone can see. One day she stood next to Max's cage for an entire hour, just observing his stillness. "This dog," Sarah whispered to herself, "is an old soul, weary but still waiting." Yet, whenever Sarah asked the staff about Max, the response was always, "He's too old, too serious. No one wants to adopt him. He's not special." Sarah always felt a quiet sadness in her heart when she heard those words. She understood that Max might have once been a strong, lively dog. But now, his age and quiet nature were reasons that people overlooked him. These were reasons no one could change, except Max. Day after day, Max stood there, and when the daylight began to fade, he would return to his familiar corner of the cage, rest his head on his paw, and look out toward the door. Like that, year after year, Max never called out, never begged, just silently waited while the other dogs got adopted. Not because Max didn't want to be loved, but because he had understood that sometimes all one can do is wait. Wait just as he had for all these years in the shelter, day after day, month after month. Those days seemed meaningless, as everyone who passed by would merely glance at him, never stopping. Sarah remembers one evening, as she stood outside the shelter looking in. Max was still standing there, his eyes never leaving the door. A lump rose in her throat as she saw him standing so steadfast in the darkness. Can he understand? Sarah wondered. Does he know how long it's been since anyone stopped, since anyone looked into those eyes? And then, one day, a man walked past Max's cage. He stopped and looked at the dog from the outside. Max didn't bark, didn't rush over. He just looked at him with eyes that held no hope. The scene lasted a moment longer. Max remained still, staring at the man as though waiting for a sign, but the man only shook his head and continued walking. At that moment, Max did not change, still holding his familiar stance, but behind those eyes something quietly shattered. Max didn't understand why he still had to stand there, didn't understand why no one paid attention to him. But he knew that, no matter how many times he was ignored, he would continue standing there. Not because he didn't feel sadness, but because love remained, a silent love that never fades. Each day passes and Max's patience is once again tested, but it never runs out, like a slow-burning fire that still burns in his heart, a fire that cannot be extinguished. Those long days, no one sees Max, no one notices him. But in those eyes, there is an eternal love, a waiting that never gives up. Max is not just a dog in a shelter. He is a resilient soul, a living testament to the power of hope and loyalty. Every day, Max lives with a strong belief that one day, someone will stop. The following day, as sunlight danced through the small window, Sarah continued with her routine. Max remained standing there, keeping to his habit, patiently waiting in his cage. Although no one paid attention to him, something in the air had shifted. A new volunteer had arrived at the shelter, and she had noticed something that no one else could see. Emily, a young girl with long brown hair, had just started her volunteer work at the shelter. She arrived with a heart full of enthusiasm and a desire to help the dogs that had no place to call home. At first, Emily was busy with the usual tasks: cleaning, feeding the dogs, and taking care of the small creatures in the shelter. But there was something that caught her attention from the very first day. It was Max's eyes. At first, Emily didn't quite understand why a dog could have eyes like that. Those eyes didn't carry the confusion or anxiety of dogs who were new to the shelter, but rather a void, a patience that seemed endless. It wasn't a hopeful patience. It was a weary one, as if the dog had given up on any belief that anyone would see him. Max stood there, silently, staring ahead without showing any signs of excitement when someone came near. One afternoon, while other volunteers were taking care of the other dogs, Emily quietly walked over to Max's cage. The dog was still standing there, his eyes gleaming but weighed down, as if they carried the burden of countless years of longing. She stopped and looked at Max for a moment. Max's eyes, though not reflecting any obvious despair, carried something Emily could feel deeply, an exhaustion of hope. He no longer ran to greet her when she approached, barked, or welcomed her. Max simply stood there, quietly observing, as if he had accepted that no one would stop, that no one would come to love him. A gentle breeze swept by, causing Emily's hair to flutter in the air. She couldn't take her eyes off Max. Her heart was being pulled by an invisible force, unable to turn away. She felt the pain in those eyes, the weariness that had overtaken every strand of his fur. A lump rose in her throat, but at the same time, there was a firm resolve. She would not let Max continue to suffer alone. "He doesn't belong here," Emily whispered, as if speaking to herself more than to the dog. She sat down next to the cage, not touching Max, just quietly observing. Max's eyes didn't leave her, but there was no agitation or joy. He just looked at her with an empty, tired gaze that still held a clarity of intelligence, as if trying to understand what she was trying to say. She didn't rush, didn't try to do anything except sit in silence and share that space with Max, as if letting him know that, finally, someone had come. From that moment on, Emily couldn't forget that gaze, couldn't erase the image of Max standing alone, patiently yet full of pain. She knew he wasn't just a dog. He was a soul that had lived through years of waiting, a soul that was ready to open up, if only someone would allow it. And Emily made a decision, right then and there, that she would not let Max continue to wait in vain. That night, when her work at the shelter had ended, Emily couldn't sleep. She went back to her social media page and posted a message, along with a photo of Max standing silently in his cage. "This is Max. He's been here for 6 years. No one has ever stopped to adopt him. They say he's too old, too serious. But I know he has a heart full of love, and I can't let him keep waiting alone anymore." She didn't expect much from the post, just hoping that someone out there might see Max and the strength hidden in those eyes. Emily put her phone down and sighed. She didn't know where the post would go, but one thing was certain. Max was no longer just a forgotten dog in a shelter. She had made up her mind. She wouldn't give up. She wouldn't leave Max alone. After that afternoon, when Emily sat beside Max's cage, unable to take her eyes off his thoughtful gaze, she knew she couldn't leave him alone any longer. A mixture of sadness and determination stirred within her, making it impossible to stop thinking about Max. She didn't want to just feel sympathy, she wanted to act. And the only way she thought she could help Max was to share his story with the world. That's why, as soon as she got home, Emily decided to post a message on social media, where she often shared pictures and stories about the animals she met through her volunteer work. But this time, her post wasn't just another ordinary story. This was the story of Max, a dog who had been waiting in neglect for 6 long years, with a patient but weary gaze, looking for one last chance. She opened her phone and wrote a brief but emotional message. "This is Max. He's been in this shelter for 6 years, and no one wants to adopt him because he's too old and too serious. But in those eyes, there's a heart full of love. If you can give Max a chance, please share his story. Max doesn't just need a house. He needs a family. Emily didn't know what kind of impact the post would have, but she wanted to do everything she could. After posting, she set her phone down and looked out the window, where the evening light was beginning to fade. She wondered if anyone out there would see her post, and if anyone could feel the pain and hope in Max's story. Just a few minutes later, a light ping from her phone signaled a new notification. She picked it up, and her eyes widened when she saw the number under her post. 50 shares. She couldn't believe her eyes. She kept watching as the post gradually received hundreds of shares, then thousands. Strangers began commenting, expressing their emotions, and offering help, promising to find a family for Max. People who had never met him began caring, and began sharing his story as though they could feel the pain in it. Emily couldn't take her eyes off the screen. The number of shares kept climbing. By the end of the day, her post had more than 20,000 shares. She couldn't believe her eyes. And then, as night fell, a new notification appeared. Some national newspapers had started reaching out, wanting to feature Max's story on their platforms. She suddenly realized that Max's story wasn't just confined to that shelter. It had spread out into the world. A wave of indescribable emotion filled her. Astonishment, joy, and a great sense of hope. Max was no longer a forgotten dog in a corner cage. He had become a symbol of hope, a loyal friend waiting for a family. A part of Emily's heartfelt happiness seeing Max's story being shared widely. But another part of her was full of anxiety. Would someone be ready to adopt Max? Could this story have a happy ending? Her emotions surged, but deep down, there was still a worry, a burning desire. How could Max not wait anymore? How could that poor dog finally find the home he deserved, a place where he would no longer have to stand alone, in silence and patience? The next morning, when she woke up, Emily's post had attracted the attention of thousands of people. Shares, comments expressing heartfelt emotions, and even offers to adopt flooded her screen. Emily couldn't stop smiling, but she also couldn't stop worrying. She knew that this was just the first step. There was still a long road ahead, and she couldn't shake the anxious feeling she had when thinking about Max. But there was one thing Emily felt certain about. Max's story, the story of a dog patiently waiting, of love that never gives up, had begun to spread, and it wouldn't stop until Max found the family he so deserved. That entire night, Emily couldn't sleep. Although she knew her post had begun to spread, when she woke up the next morning, she couldn't believe what she saw. A wave of emotion surged in her heart as she looked at her phone screen. 50,000 shares. The numbers kept rising rapidly, like a flame igniting after a strong gust of wind. Beneath each post, hundreds of encouraging words, offers of help, and even questions from families wanting to adopt Max. But what surprised Emily even more was that not only strangers from all around the world were sharing Max's story, but major media outlets were starting to reach out, eager to feature Max's story on air. Newspapers, TV programs, and even national radio stations began running news stories and clips about Max. The story of a dog who had waited for 6 long years in a shelter, forgotten by the world, suddenly became a symbol of hope and unspoken love. Pictures of Max, with his sad yet resilient eyes, bathed in the warm light from his small cage, quickly appeared everywhere, from news websites to social media platforms. It seemed as if the whole world had seen Max, seen his unwavering loyalty, and realized that every creature deserved a chance, a home, a family. Emily could feel the change that was unfolding. She couldn't believe that in just 24 hours, her post had created such a powerful wave. She had received thousands of messages, comments, and words of encouragement. Each share contained empathy, and strangers now wanted to play a part in helping Max find a family. However, amid the joy, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety weighing on her heart. She couldn't stop wondering if someone would truly come forward and give Max a chance. Would this story have a happy ending? Or would Max become just another fleeting part of the noise, forgotten once again? By midday, as the post continued to spread across social media, a message arrived that made Emily's heart skip a beat. It was a long message from a man named Daniel. He said he had recognized Max in the post, and that Max was the dog he had lost in a fire 6 years ago. Emily's heart stopped for a few seconds. She couldn't believe it. This wasn't just a regular story. It was a miracle. Max had once had a family, and now that family was searching for him. This message not only changed everything for Max, but it also completely changed the story. Emily read each word of the message over and over again. Then she turned and looked at Max. The lump in her throat returned. Max was not just a dog in a shelter, not just a dog who had been forgotten. He had a story, a past full of love, and now that past had come back, bringing with it a new hope. Emily and Maggie, the shelter manager, quickly checked the information Daniel had provided. Old photos of Max before the fire began to appear on the screen. Photos of a man with a beard and a gentle gaze. It was him. It was Max. A deep sense of shock and emotion overwhelmed Emily. She hurriedly called Daniel, feeling the nervousness and excitement in his voice. He couldn't believe it. After 6 years of searching, Max was now standing at the very shelter door. Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He immediately made plans to come to the shelter to reunite with Max. Everything seemed to be happening so fast, like a dream that Emily didn't dare believe. Max, that resilient dog, was finally going to reunite with his long-lost owner. And the story of a dog who never gave up, despite being forgotten, was about to turn a new page. When Daniel arrived at the shelter, no one could anticipate what would happen next. A sense of anticipation and tension filled the air. Emily stood beside, her eyes brimming with tears, unable to take her eyes off Max. The dog was still sitting in his cage, but this time, it wasn't the weight of exhaustion. It was the weight of a dog who knew that finally, someone was coming to change his life. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, his mind spinning with thoughts of Max, the dog he had lost in the fire, a loyal companion with whom he had shared so many memories. The days of searching for Max, the mornings when he went outside calling the dog's name, the steps he took to places that could never be reached again. Those feelings seemed as fresh as ever in his heart. After the fire, everything shattered, and his hope of finding Max seemed to go out with the flames. But the night before, after seeing Emily's post, a glimmer of light had sparked in his heart. He couldn't stop thinking about the picture of Max. The eyes, the ears, the sleek golden-brown fur. There was no doubt about it, that was Max. The dog he had raised, cared for, and loved. After years of searching in vain, here he was, appearing before him through pictures on social media. The feeling was like a miracle, like a dream, but too real to deny. Daniel sat up in bed, his hands trembling as he picked up his phone. He couldn't wait any longer, couldn't just sit still and dream about meeting Max. He had searched for him for 6 years, asked everyone he could, visited the places where he used to take Max for walks. And now, finally, he had the chance to find him. He immediately called Emily. "Emily, this is Daniel," he said, his voice filled with confusion and excitement. "I just saw your post about Max, and I think that's my dog. Max, the dog I lost in the fire." Each word he spoke carried a lump in his throat, as if those years of searching were finally paying off. "Can you be sure?" "I can't believe my eyes, but I have to meet him." On the other end of the line, Emily paused for a few seconds. Then her voice softened, filled with emotion. "Daniel, I can't believe it. We have to meet right away. Max is here, and I'm sure it's your dog." A wave of joy flooded Daniel's heart. He had searched for Max for so many years, and now he couldn't stop thinking about being reunited with his dog. He immediately drove to the shelter, his emotions overwhelming him, nervousness, excitement, and joy. This would be the reunion he had dreamed of for so long. He drove through the old streets, the roads where he and Max had once walked together, where they had shared happy moments. But now, all of that was just a memory. The fire had erased all traces, but the love he had for Max had never faded. When he pulled up to the shelter gate, his heart was pounding as if each beat was drawing him closer to the moment of reuniting with the dog he had lost. Taking a deep breath, Daniel got out of the car. The unfamiliar feeling washed over him. He had stood there before, at this gate, but this time everything felt different. He felt as though he was standing at a crossroads in his life, where patience, waiting, and hope had led him to this point. The gate opened, and Daniel stepped inside, his eyes searching the area, each step heavy as if every footfall was bringing him closer to Max. Then, in that quiet space, he saw Max. Time seemed to stand still for a moment. Max stood in his cage, still the same, the eyes bright, looking at him with calmness. But deep inside, there was recognition, a connection that needed no words. Max stood there, silently observing the man before him. No barking, no excited running like other dogs when meeting their owners, just a gaze. That gaze was no longer the panic of a strange dog, the exhaustion of a dog left behind. It was the gaze of an old friend, a friend seeing his companion after years of separation. Daniel couldn't hold back his emotions. He slowly walked up, knelt, and extended his hand through the bars. Max slowly approached, eyes locked on him, and without hesitation, the dog touched his nose to Daniel's hand. A silent connection, but a strong one. Max had recognized him, and Daniel knew at that moment that his journey of searching was finally over. Max was no longer just a dog in his past. He was a symbol of hope, a living testament to undying love that never gives up. And now, they would never be apart again. Daniel never knew that the moment he stepped through the door of the shelter, his heart would be flooded with such intense emotions. The world seemed to pause, leaving only the sound of his heavy footsteps, each step seeming to prolong the moment. He had waited so long, searched hopelessly for 6 years, and now, all that remained was to stand before Max's cage. He couldn't believe he had this chance after all those long nights dreaming about Max, those mornings calling out the dog's name with no response. The anticipation made him feel breathless. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was here, everything seemed surreal, like an unbelievable dream. He looked around. Everything was familiar, yet strangely unfamiliar. The cages, the figures moving around, and the dogs running about, all of it felt like a faded memory. But now he had returned to find what he had lost. And then he saw Max. The dog was still standing there, in his old cage, an unchanging image. But there was a clear difference. Max didn't rush toward him like the other dogs, didn't bark, didn't jump around. He just stood still, his eyes lighting up as he looked directly at Daniel. Those eyes, after 6 long years, still held the same vitality and boundless love for his old owner. They no longer carried the panic or longing that had been present when Max was first brought here. Instead, they showed recognition, a recognition from an old friend, a friend who needed no words, only a look to understand everything. A moment of silence passed. Time seemed to stop. There was no sound, just 2 sets of eyes meeting. Daniel couldn't contain his emotion. He slowly knelt down, his hands trembling as he reached through the bars, feeling Max's breath, the warmth of his body. Despite the passing years, Max still carried the patience, the loyalty that Daniel had always trusted. Max didn't rush toward him, didn't hurry. Instead, he moved slowly, gradually approaching the cage's door. The scene unfolded in slow motion, each of Max's small movements captured in exquisite detail. The dog sat down, his eyes never leaving Daniel's. From this closer vantage point, Daniel could see every detail of Max's face. The ears still perked, the white spot under his chin, and the golden-brown fur that had begun to fade with time. Everything felt like a moment frozen in memory, an indelible mark of loyalty that could never be erased. Daniel let out a long, strangled breath, unable to speak. Tears silently rolled down his cheeks. He didn't know how long he had waited for this moment, but looking into Max's eyes, it felt like everything had been said. Just one look, just one silent connection, and Daniel knew he had found his dog again, the friend he had lost all those years ago. Max remained still, his eyes shining, but not with the longing of a dog wishing for something. No, it was a look full of trust. It was as if he had known all along that after everything, his owner had returned. There was no hurry, no barking, no frantic movements, just calmness, recognition, and a deep, emotional understanding. Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He gently extended his hand through the cage's bars, carefully stroking Max's back. The dog didn't move, just let out a soft sigh, as if savoring the presence of the owner he hadn't seen in so long. Max's eyes, though not as youthful as before, still held clarity and resilience. Daniel whispered, "I found you, Max. I'm not leaving you again." Max exhaled gently, his head tilting to one side as if understanding every word Daniel spoke. There was no barking, no extravagant gestures, just quiet, heartfelt tranquility. Max listened, feeling the love emanating from Daniel's hand, and seemed to understand that he no longer needed to wait. Both of them, in the silent space between them, had reconnected after so many years apart. When Daniel opened the cage, Max didn't rush out. Instead, he stepped out slowly, as if savoring each precious moment. The two of them stepped into the light of a new day, where they would begin again, side by side. Max walked calmly next to Daniel, no urging needed, no rush to do anything but walk with him. The feeling of reunion had come, and nothing could separate them again. This moment, captured in every little detail, would remain a deep memory in Daniel's heart, just as it would in Max's. And in both their hearts, a new chapter of life would begin. When Max entered Daniel's home, he didn't rush and didn't bounce around like the other dogs. He entered slowly, as if every step was a discovery of a new world. It had been so many years since Max had felt the warmth of a home, the peace that a family brings. But now, everything has changed. He no longer had to live in the cramped cages or the cold concrete walls of the shelter. The door to the house opened before him like a new world, a fresh start, and he stepped in with curiosity, but also with a sense of peace that he had never felt before. Daniel, watching Max, could feel each step he took, each moment he experienced in his new home. And in his heart, a feeling too profound to describe rose within him. This was not the beginning of a new story, but the continuation of an old friendship, a love that would never fade. He knew that, though time might have worn away what had passed, the love Max had for him had not changed, and he would never make Max wait again. Max moved from room to room, his nose gently sniffing the corners of the house as if marking each space, each place he could call his own. His eyes looked around, moving across every wall and every piece of furniture, but there was no rush. He walked slowly, soaking in the newness of everything. From the kitchen, where the morning light created a warm atmosphere, to the living room, where Daniel often sat, and finally stopping at the soft rug where Max would lie. This was the first time Max felt that he was no longer a forgotten dog, but a part of a family. This home, full of love and care, would be the place Max would never have to leave again. When Max stepped outside into the garden, he felt the fresh air, the scent of the moist earth after a light rain. A sense of freedom washed over him, but not the kind of freedom he had experienced running outside before. This was the freedom of the soul, the freedom of no longer having to wait, having to live in loneliness. Max didn't run around like the other dogs. He simply walked slowly, his eyes lifted to the sky as if feeling the warmth of the sun on his body. For the first time in his life, he felt safe, knowing he no longer had to live in fear or want. Each step, Each breath was filled with the freedom and happiness that Max had longed for. Daniel stood there, watching Max, feeling joy spreading through his heart. He knew that bringing Max home wasn't just about giving him a new roof over his head. It was more about bringing him back to the love and care he deserved. This was the life Max had missed for so many years. Seeing Max run in the garden, his eyes sparkling with happiness, made Daniel feel certain he had made the right choice, despite all the challenges they had faced. When they returned inside, Max didn't rush. Instead, he slowly lay down on the familiar rug. Daniel couldn't quite remember when Max first lay on this rug, but now he had made it his own, as if it were part of the house, part of the peace he had found. Max's head rested on the rug, his eyes gently closing, as if savoring these first moments of a life without worry, without endless waiting. Daniel sat beside Max, gently stroking his back, as if to remind him that he was no longer alone. "I will always be here," he whispered, his eyes filled with tenderness. Max didn't need to respond, didn't need to do anything. Just lying beside him, Max could feel it all. Everything around them had changed, and Max no longer had to worry. Max's new life began here, not as a new start from scratch, but as a continuation of love and hope. Max didn't just find a house, he found his old friend again, the one he had waited for all those years. From this day on, Max would never have to live alone again, never again stand waiting in loneliness. He and Daniel would share happy moments, afternoon walks, and peaceful nights. Their friendship had been healed, and a new life was unfolding with many promising days ahead. Max and Daniel's new life flowed peacefully, as if these two friends had finally found the calm shore they both deserved. Each morning, they walked together through the forest near their home, where the quiet space and fresh air made them both feel at ease. Max had fully adapted to his new life, but no one could have known that one day Max would prove to Daniel that he wasn't just a dog who had found a family again. He was also a heroic friend. One morning, like any other, Daniel and Max set out for their daily walk through the forest. Max, now familiar with every path and trail, was accustomed to the area. But today, something felt different. The dog stopped, sniffing the air gently, his ears perking up. Daniel noticed a change in Max's demeanor. He seemed to be picking up on something unusual. Max started walking faster, heading toward a denser part of the forest, an area where few people ever ventured. Daniel, though slightly concerned, trusted his dog and decided to follow. Max led the way, weaving through bushes, occasionally stopping to sniff the air, then continuing onward. Daniel followed, thinking that Max was acting on some instinct he hadn't yet fully understood. But after a short while, Max suddenly stopped completely, standing still in front of a dense bush, his eyes fixed on a point in the forest. As Daniel approached, he felt an unusual chill in the air. At that moment, Max moved closer and gently knelt, wagging his tail as if trying to soothe an invisible worry. Daniel crouched down, and then he saw a little girl, about 7 or 8 years old, curled up and trembling from the cold. Her eyes were filled with tears, her face panicked. Clearly she had been lost in the forest for some time. She didn't say a word, only stared at Daniel and Max, unsure of what to do. Max immediately approached her, gently sniffing her hand, then licking it as if to comfort her. Daniel was amazed at how Max didn't hesitate for a second, but immediately began to wrap the girl in his protective embrace. He sat down beside her, asking if she was okay, but she simply shook her head, too frightened to speak. Max didn't leave her side. He sat next to the girl, looking at Daniel as if to say, "We need to help her." The strong bond between Max and the little girl made Daniel's heart ache. He knew he couldn't leave her there any longer. Max stood up and began to move, not in a hurry, but with firm determination. He looked back at Daniel as if asking him to follow. With absolute trust in Max, Daniel stood up and followed. The three of them moved through the bushes and forest paths. Max led with confidence and certainty, sometimes stopping to sniff and check the direction. Every time Max stopped, Daniel felt a bit of worry, but seeing Max's focused gaze reassured him. The little girl was no longer trembling. With Max's presence, she felt safer. Max wasn't just a protective friend, he was also a guide, leading her out of the place where she had been lost. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more Daniel felt the magic of Max's actions. This wasn't just a dog searching for food or taking his owner on a walk. This was a true friend, a hero, always ready to protect those in need. And then, as they finally emerged from the dense woods, the morning light began to shine on their path. A sense of relief filled Daniel's heart. They had reached a familiar trail, and the forest no longer seemed to frighten the girl. Max, with a proud look in his eyes, sat down beside the girl as if he had completed an important mission. The girl smiled sweetly, her eyes sparkling with gratitude as she looked at Max. Max didn't bark, didn't do anything loud. He just sat there, his eyes focused on the girl and Daniel as if to say, "This is my job and I've helped." And Daniel, deep in his heart, knew that with Max nothing was too difficult, and he would always be the heroic friend he needed. Finally, Daniel gently picked up the girl and headed home, where she would be safe. This was not just a moment of rescue. It was also a testament to the love, loyalty, and unconditional courage that Max had shown. After Max saved the little girl from the forest, the story of his heroic act quickly spread, drawing widespread media attention. News of Max didn't just appear on local news sites, but was also featured on national television channels and social media, and quickly went viral worldwide. Max, once an abandoned dog, had now become a symbol of loyalty, love, and unconditional strength. The story of Max touched the hearts of millions. The lost girl, trembling from the cold and fear, was saved by Max. Not just an act of heroism, but a testament to the incredible bond between humans and animals. The details of Max, a dog who never uttered a word, simply following his instincts to help another, moved the hearts of so many. Newspapers, television stations, and animal protection organizations began sharing Max's story. The dog who saved a life, Max, a loyal friend to mankind, and Max's heroic act. These headlines were boldly printed on magazines and news sites. TV programs invited Max and Daniel for interviews, and emotional meetings took place where Max's story not only brought tears to the viewers' eyes, but also made them realize one important truth: nothing is impossible if we have patience and boundless love. Max, the dog who had once lived alone in the shelter for 6 years, was now a hero in everyone's hearts. The story of Max didn't stop with his act of saving the girl. It carried a powerful message about loyalty. Max proved that even though a dog cannot speak, they can still feel, love, and protect in extraordinary ways. Dogs like Max, those loyal friends, will always be there for us when we need them most. Daniel, Max's former owner, felt incredibly proud seeing his dog become a symbol of patience and sacrifice. He remembered the early days when Max was a lonely dog in the shelter, unnoticed by anyone. And now, Max wasn't just a dog who had found a family again. He was a hero, helping others, a shining example of unshakable loyalty. Every time Max appeared in public, people smiled and applauded him. Not because of fame, but because everyone understood that, despite being abandoned, Max had done something no one expected. He saved a little girl's life. He had proven that nothing is too difficult if we don't give up, and if we have a heart full of love and unyielding perseverance. Max's story inspired many people, especially animal lovers. Animal protection organizations and volunteer groups began using Max's story to encourage others to adopt abandoned dogs, dogs that were waiting for the chance to be loved. Max became the symbol of dogs without homes, a symbol of hope for all animals in need of love and care. Max was no longer just a hero dog in the story of saving the girl. He had become an influential figure in the community. Television programs, interviews, and meetups with animal-loving communities created a powerful wave that changed how people viewed adopting dogs and treating animals. Max's story not only helped him find a true home, but it also helped thousands of other dogs find the love they deserved. The dog who had once been abandoned, who had once lived in loneliness, now had a family. And not only that, Max had become a great friend, a hero in everyone's heart. Every time Max stood next to Daniel, with pride and love in his eyes, Daniel knew that nothing in life was meaningless and that a dog like Max could truly change the world. Max's heroic act, from saving the girl in the forest to becoming a symbol of patience and love, touched the hearts of everyone who loved animals and cherished loyalty. Max was no longer just the dog in the story. He had become part of a larger story, a story of loyalty, sacrifice, and unconditional love. And that story, though it had gone far, would always remain a source of inspiration for all those who believe in the power of love and perseverance, and never give up. As Max's story spread widely and became a symbol of loyalty and sacrifice, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the other dogs like Max, loving and loyal creatures, yet abandoned in the forgotten corners of society. She saw in Max's eyes not only courage, but also hope that could change the fate of other forgotten dogs. And inspired by the change Max brought, Emily knew she had to take action. Moved by Max's story, Emily decided to launch a new project, one she called Second Chance. She wanted to create a safe space where abandoned dogs could find love, care, and, most importantly, a family to love them. She didn't want dogs like Max to continue living in cramped cages, waiting hopelessly, but instead to have the chance to be loved and cared for until the end of their lives. Daniel, Max's loyal friend, was the first person Emily shared her idea with. Daniel, who had faced many difficulties but always believed in himself and Max, knew that if they could help a dog like Max find a family, then why couldn't they do the same for other dogs? He nodded in support of Emily and decided to join her in building this project. To bring Second Chance to life, Emily and Daniel began looking for partners, people who shared their vision and were willing to contribute time and effort to create a shelter for abandoned dogs. They reached out to animal protection organizations, volunteers, and dog lovers who shared the same desire to help. Their project wasn't just about providing a home for dogs, but also about educating the community on the importance of adopting and caring for animals. Throughout this process, Max remained their greatest inspiration. Each time Emily and Daniel looked at Max, they remembered the hardships he had endured. And each time, their determination grew stronger. Max was not just an ordinary dog. Max was a living testament to a hopeful story. A story that even when abandoned, one could find a family. One could become a hero. Second Chance gradually began to take shape. Emily and Daniel expanded their network of volunteers and related organizations. They organized meetups, community education programs, and adoption events. Both of them tirelessly shared Max's story, spreading the message that every abandoned dog deserved a second chance, a family that would love them. One of the most meaningful moments was when Max, once an abandoned dog, became the face of Second Chance. Max's story hadn't only changed his life, it had become the story of many other dogs. Emily and Daniel realized that Second Chance wasn't just a project, it had become a movement, a campaign that was changing the way people viewed dog adoption, animal love, and protection. Every morning, Emily woke up with indescribable joy as she thought of the dogs who would now have the chance to find a family. Daniel, always by Max's side, was ready to take part in every activity with her. They didn't just find joy in helping animals. They found a deeper connection in their friendship. The friendship that Max had helped build through simple, yet incredibly meaningful moments. And as Emily looked at Max walking beside her, his eyes filled with trust and peace, she knew that their efforts would never be in vain. Max, from an abandoned dog, had now become the pride of the project, the inspiration for everyone. His story wasn't just about salvation. It was about giving opportunities, giving love, and receiving the miracles that love can bring. Second Chance wasn't just about helping dogs. It was about helping people realize that sometimes all it takes is one chance to change, one chance to find their home. And that was the message that Max and Emily wanted to bring to the world. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to love. As Second Chance began to grow, one of the key steps that Emily and Daniel decided to take was to involve Max in volunteer programs where he could offer comfort and inspiration to those in need, particularly students and patients facing hardships in life. Max, once an abandoned dog, had now become a symbol of perseverance and unconditional love. His heroic act of saving the little girl in the forest opened up opportunities for him to bring comfort and hope to even more people. Every trip, every visit Max made was an emotional and meaningful journey. He didn't just visit schools to meet students. He also visited hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and places where patients and disabled individuals were struggling with pain and emotional void. From being a dog that was once abandoned, Max has become an inseparable friend to those in difficult situations, offering encouragement, comfort, and hope. Each time Max entered a classroom, the students' eyes filled with excitement and anticipation as they turned to look at him. Max, like a close friend, slowly walked into the room, tail wagging gently, his gaze soft and friendly. The students, especially those who had faced loneliness, illness, or loss in their families, clapped and laughed as Max approached. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a true friend, a living symbol of hope for children going through hard times. Max's story, a dog who never gave up and never turned away despite being abandoned, had become a valuable lesson in patience and the power of love. Daniel often accompanied Max, and during each of these visits, he noticed that not only the students, but also the teachers were deeply moved by the warmth Max brought. They began sharing stories about the struggles their students faced, those who lacked affection or were dealing with difficult family situations. Max, though unable to speak, provided immense encouragement simply by being there. A gentle gesture, a tender lick on the hand, or just a loving glance was enough to reassure everyone and make them feel more confident about life. Not stopping at schools, Max also visited hospitals, where patients were battling illness. In the quiet hospital rooms, the anxiety, pain, and unease of patients seemed to fade when Max walked in. The dog gently made his way through each room, sitting beside patients so they could stroke his soft fur. With each touch, the patients felt lighter, as if their pain was being eased, as if all the difficulties in life could suddenly be overcome. One of the most memorable visits was when Max went to a rehabilitation center for people with disabilities. Those who were learning to walk again, those battling persistent pain, all looked at Max with appreciation. Max wasn't just a dog, he was a symbol of perseverance. His slow but steady steps reminded them that no matter how hard life may get, as long as we don't give up, we can overcome any challenge. Max, with his affectionate licks and friendly tail wags, brought them a huge source of motivation. Moreover, Max also brought warmth and engaging conversations with doctors, nurses, and staff in the hospitals. Those who worked in such stressful environments, witnessing so much pain, found comfort in each encounter with Max. They laughed, talked to the dog, and sometimes simply sat quietly, looking at him with a gentle smile, feeling that even a little bit of love could ease the hardships of life. Max wasn't just the dog who saved the girl in the forest. He was a friend, a companion helping all those in need. He had become an essential part of many people's healing journeys. Max's heroic act didn't just stop at saving a life. It continued to spread love and hope to hearts in pain. When Daniel and Emily saw Max, they both felt something deep. Max's story had never ended. It wasn't just the story of a dog who saved a girl in the forest. It was the story of strength, perseverance, and unconditional love, values that Max had brought to the community. And Max's journey continued. for he had not only changed the life of one girl, but had touched the lives of millions, inspiring them to never give up, to never lose hope. After his volunteer trips, Max became a role model in the animal-loving community, not only because of his heroic act of saving the lost girl in the forest, but also for the unconditional love he brought to those around him. But Max's growth did not stop at helping humans. One day, at the shelter where Max had once spent long, lonely days, the hero dog had another opportunity to show his patience and compassion. This time it wasn't a human, but a little puppy, a tiny, fearful, and lost creature in need of guidance and love. When Max and Daniel visited the shelter, they were drawn to a sight. A puppy curled up in the corner of its kennel, its eyes filled with fear and anxiety. This puppy, only a few months old, had already suffered abandonment and a lack of affection from an early age. The emotional scars on its body were not physical wounds, but invisible pains, a lack of love and care. The puppy didn't dare approach anyone. Whenever someone came near, it shrank back, its eyes full of panic. Max, seeing the puppy, did not rush over like the other dogs. He paused for a moment, his eyes gazing deeply at the puppy as if sensing the fear in its heart. He didn't bark, nor did he rush in. Instead, Max simply sat quietly, watching the puppy with patience and gentleness. After a while, Max slowly moved closer, but without forcing it. The puppy remained still, not moving, but its eyes seemed to become less frantic. Max, with the understanding of a dog who had gone through difficulties, knew that only patience and love could make the puppy feel safe. Daniel stood at a distance, observing Max. He knew that, with Max, nothing was impossible. What Max had gone through in the past, abandonment, loneliness, had now become a valuable lesson, an empathy that he could pass on to other dogs. He watched Max from afar, feeling the maturity and boundless love that Max gave, not just to people, but also to his four-legged friends. Max approached the puppy in a very gentle manner. He bent down, allowing the puppy to sense his presence without feeling threatened. Max was in no hurry, doing nothing to scare the puppy but slowly moving closer and touching the puppy's paw with his nose. At first, the puppy flinched, but gradually it began to calm down, its eyes growing wide with curiosity. Max didn't bark, nor jump up. He gently licked the puppy's paw, as if saying, "Don't worry, I won't scare you anymore." The puppy gradually realized that Max was not a threat, but a friend. After a while, Max lay down near the puppy, not rushing or asking for anything. Finally, the puppy lowered itself and slowly moved closer to Max. It gently licked Max's back, as a way of saying thank you, a sign that after all the fear, it could trust again. This moment between Max and the puppy was a touching and meaningful one. Max was not just the dog who saved the girl in the forest, but also a teacher, teaching the puppy how to trust humans again. What Max had gone through, the long days of waiting at the shelter, now became a lesson for the puppy. Max taught it that no matter how hard life is, we can still find love and safety. And the most important lesson: never give up on trust. Max, from a dog once abandoned, had now become a friend and a teacher to other dogs. He proved that patience and love not only helped him overcome difficulties, but also helped other creatures regain trust in humans. Max's story was not just about salvation, but also about teaching, about the unconditional love a dog could offer to its four-legged friends. With Max's guidance, the puppy began to change. It was no longer as fearful as before, and gradually, it started to socialize with the other dogs in the shelter. Max, with a gentle wag of his tail, looked at the puppy as an older brother looked at his younger sibling. And then, the two of them walked together, starting a new journey where love and patience would guide them. In that moment, Daniel stood and watched, realizing that the story of Max was not just the story of a heroic dog, but also a story of patience, of never giving up, not just for humans, but for the creatures we call friends. Since Max began participating in charity programs, the dog has not only become a companion to children or an encouragement to the sick, but also a source of inspiration and comfort for those who have endured great pain in life. One day, when Emily and Daniel were invited to visit a rehabilitation center for veterans, Max had another opportunity to prove that he was not just a great friend, but also could bring healing to troubled souls. The Rehabilitation Center for Veterans was a place where former soldiers who had fought in brutal wars came to heal both physical and mental wounds. These soldiers, after years of battle, carried not only physical scars, but also deep emotional wounds, haunting memories, and painful experiences that could not easily be erased. When Max entered the center, he did not run and jumped joyfully as usual. He stopped, sniffed the air, and then slowly walked in, wagging his tail gently. The veterans, men who had lived through the harsh environment of war, now looked exhausted. But when they saw Max, their eyes suddenly lit up as if a new light had just shone into their hearts. They looked at Max, then at each other, as if recognizing that this was a special opportunity to feel the love and comfort that they had lost throughout their years of combat. Max approached each person slowly, without rushing, without excessive curiosity. He simply walked over and sat beside them, as a quiet friend sharing their presence. The dog did not seem anxious, just silently staying there, looking at them with sincere eyes, as if understanding that these veterans were carrying pains that were difficult to share. Hands reached out to pet Max's soft fur, hands that bore scars, hands that had once held guns, now gently soothing their hearts through contact with a dog. This simple scene was deeply moving. Max did not need to do much. He simply sat beside them, relaxed, and allowed his presence to bring comfort. One veteran sat quietly, stroking Max, his eyes full of sorrow, but also glimmering with relief. No words were spoken, but perhaps at that moment all he needed was a friend sitting beside him, without asking, without trying to fully understand the pain, just a friend to help ease the torment in his heart. One of the veterans, John, a soldier who had participated in many battles, struggled to face his memories of war. He had endured long, difficult days, unable to sleep, unable to escape the haunting memories. But when he looked into Max's eyes, he felt as though he had found a strange peace. He didn't know why, but each time he touched Max's fur, he felt less tense, less anxious, as if part of his heart had been soothed. The nightmares, the destructive memories, no longer overwhelmed him like before. For each veteran in the center, Max brought a sense of relaxation, a relief they couldn't find anywhere else. The soldiers, after their wars, had learned to live alone, to endure pain by themselves. But now, in Max's presence, they realized they didn't always have to bear it alone. Sometimes, healing came from simple things. A look, a stroke, a warm presence without expectations. Daniel, standing beside Max, observed it all, feeling the change in the atmosphere. He knew that Max not only helped dogs find families, but also assisted people struggling with the ghosts of the past. Each time Max approached someone, he reaffirmed the power of loyalty and unconditional love. Max, from a dog once abandoned, had now become a strong source of encouragement for those seeking peace in their souls. The story of Max did not end with rescuing the girl or helping the sick. This heroic dog had helped souls hardened by the past, teaching them that in life, there are always moments to heal and to start anew. Max had become a symbol not only of loyalty, but also of the miraculous power of unconditional love, a love that could soothe deep wounds that people found difficult to heal on their own. After visits to hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and other places, Max continued his journey of becoming a symbol of perseverance and loyalty. One day, Emily and Daniel decided to take Max to visit a school where the students would hear Max's story and realize the profound values of patience, waiting, and hope. This was a special trip, not only for Max, but also for the children growing up in a world full of challenges, where lessons about kindness and patience could bring about significant changes in their lives. When Max and Daniel entered the classroom, the curious eyes of the students immediately turned towards them. Max, as usual, didn't rush, walking in with a calm and gentle demeanor, as if he was accustomed to being the center of attention. The whole class looked at Max with focused eyes, their faces filled with excitement, affection, and curiosity. The dog, with his shiny golden-brown coat and bright eyes, walked in like a friend, not to teach, but to share his own story. Emily began the story, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Today we are going to meet a special friend. This is Max, a dog who was once abandoned in a shelter for 6 years. But instead of giving up, Max waited. And after 6 years, Max found his family. But his story doesn't stop there. Max also saved a lost girl in the forest. And now this dog travels everywhere to help others. Max has become a symbol of patience, of unconditional love. Emily's story made the students listen attentively, not just because it was a story about a lovable dog, but because it contained profound life lessons. Max was not just the dog who saved the girl, but also a model of perseverance, a creature once abandoned, but able to change the world around him through his actions. Max's story was a lesson about not giving up, about waiting in silence, and how we can create miracles simply through patience and love. Daniel continued, "You might think that Max is just a dog, but in fact, Max has taught us many things. In this life, sometimes we face difficulties and challenges that we can't overcome immediately. But like Max, we can continue to persevere, continue to wait, and eventually we will find the wonderful things we deserve." The students, from the youngest ones to the older ones, were silent, reflecting on the story. Some couldn't stop looking at Max with admiring eyes, while others seemed thoughtful, as if Max's story had touched a deep part of their hearts. Particularly, some might have recognized themselves in Max's story, those times when they felt abandoned, felt useless, felt that no one cared. But they realized that, like Max, they too could find a second chance, a family, and a place to be loved. One student stood up and asked, "Max had to wait for a long time, so how did Max not give up? Did Max ever feel tired?" Emily smiled and answered, "Max never gave up because he believed that one day someone would come and love him. Sometimes, when we feel tired, when we think we can't continue, we need to remember that good things will come to those who are patient and don't give up. And like Max, sometimes our journey just needs a little time, a little faith, and we will find wonderful things." Emily's answer stirred emotions in the classroom. The students began to clap, their eyes filled with appreciation and gratitude. Max was not just a dog in the story, but a friend, a teacher who taught them about hope and patience. Max proved that love and patience could bring about miracles, and that every dog, even when abandoned, can change the world. And then Max, without saying a word, simply sat beside the students, as if to remind them that in this life there is always a second chance, and there is always hope, as long as we don't give up. Max's story left a deep impression on the students, becoming a valuable lesson they would carry with them throughout their lives. No matter how long you have to wait, no matter how abandoned you may feel, you can still achieve greatness as long as you persevere and never give up. After the school visit, Max continued his journey, carrying lessons of patience and hope, not only to humans, but also to his four-legged friends in need of help. One day, while Max and Daniel returned to visit the shelter where Max had once spent his lonely and weary days, a special encounter took place, meeting Benny, a poor pit bull, just like Max before, abandoned and carrying the wounds of his past. Benny, a large and strong pit bull, but with eyes full of worry, was curled up in the corner of his kennel. He didn't rush out to greet anyone, and didn't wag his tail like the other dogs. Instead, Benny just stood still, his eyes filled with fear and distrust. Max, seeing Benny in such a state, did not rush over like the other dogs, but paused for a moment to observe. Max knew that, just like himself, Benny had a painful past, and he needed time to trust everything around him. Daniel looked at Max and then at Benny, understanding that today was another opportunity for Max to demonstrate the patience and unconditional love he had learned through difficult years. Max walked up to Benny, but this time he didn't rush, didn't chase after Benny's attention. Instead, Max sat down at a distance from him, doing nothing, just quietly being there, as if telling Benny, "I understand you. You're not alone." Benny, still looking at Max with a skeptical gaze, slowly approached. He didn't dare come too close immediately, but just stood from afar, sniffing Max. Max didn't push, just sat quietly and listened, as if patiently waiting for the young dog to get accustomed to him. Slowly, step by step, Benny moved closer. This simple scene carried a powerful message. Sometimes, to get to know someone, you need time, and the most important thing is patience. As Benny moved closer, Max gently stretched toward him, then softly licked Benny's nose. This was not a rushing act, but a gentle touch, like an invitation. "We can be friends." Benny, still hesitant, but no longer as fearful, licked Max back, as if marking his acceptance. Daniel stood watching, moved by Max's actions. He realized that Max was not just the dog who saved the girl, but also a teacher, a true friend to other dogs, helping them find hope and trust in life. Max had proven that empathy could overcome all barriers. And sometimes, healing comes from small actions, from the presence of a friend who understands you best. Max and Benny's story was not just about one dog helping another, but about patience, unconditional love, and sharing. Max, once an abandoned dog, had now become the teacher, helping Benny overcome his fears and regain trust in humans. And the special thing was, Max had not only changed his own life, but also helped other creatures find peace within. After a few days, Benny had started to socialize more, no longer as shy as before. He began to trust humans more, no longer shrinking back whenever someone came near. Max, though not always able to express everything he wanted to say, taught Benny, and those around him, that love and patience can heal all wounds. Max was not just the dog who saved the girl in the forest, or the friend of the veterans, but also a teacher showing other dogs how to open their hearts and trust. Max had become a living symbol of change and hope, and his journey continued, bringing valuable lessons to all who needed help, whether human or animal. After the moving visits to hospitals, schools, and rehabilitation centers, Max not only brought hope to people, but also proved his worth through his powerful actions. The story of Max is not just about a dog saving a girl in the forest or becoming a devoted friend to veterans, but over time, Max has gradually become a living symbol of patience, loyalty, and hope, not only for humans but also for other dogs waiting for a chance to be loved. Max's value wasn't just proven in heroic moments. It was through the simple yet incredibly meaningful actions in his everyday life that he changed the fate of countless other abandoned dogs, those who had once lived in loneliness and despair. Max, once an abandoned dog, unloved and neglected, had now become a friend, a teacher to other dogs, teaching them that no matter how difficult life may be, as long as you persevere and don't give up, you will find a home, a family, and a place to belong. The story of Max truly touched the hearts of many. Not only animal lovers, but even people who had never thought much about abandoned animals began to rethink. Every time Max walked into a classroom, a hospital, or a rehabilitation center, his presence was not just a mere encounter, but an opportunity for those around him to feel the true value of patience and unconditional love. Max became a shining example of never giving up, whether human or animal, regardless of how harsh the circumstances may be. In each of Max's visits, veterans, patients, and children who had suffered life's hardships realized that love and patience could heal everything. Even the dogs in the shelter, Those who had lived in the shadows of abandonment began to see that, like Max, they too could have a second chance. Max's story became a powerful message. Even if you've been abandoned, you still have value. You can still change your life. Max not only changed his own life, but also transformed the lives of other dogs in the shelter. Each dog Max met, from the small, fearful ones like Benny, to those with deep emotional scars, recognized that patience and love could heal all wounds. Max was not a perfect dog, but he had learned one invaluable lesson in life: that patience and unconditional love could create miracles. Not only that, Max's actions helped change the community's perception of abandoned animals. Animal protection organizations began to recognize that if we dedicate time, love, and patience, abandoned dogs could not only find families, but also become heroes and powerful sources of encouragement for society. Max proved that value does not come from who you are or what you've been through, but from your actions, from how you face challenges, and are ready to love unconditionally. Max's journey did not stop at saving the girl in the forest or helping the veterans, but now it has become a journey of spreading hope and healing. The community has realized that even though a dog may not have human language, they can still teach humans profound lessons about patience, love, and loyalty. Max has become the one who changes the world, not with flowery words, but with simple actions, yet full of power. Gentle licks, sincere looks, and silent moments full of love. Max, now, is not just a dog who saves people or a loyal friend to Daniel, but a powerful symbol for all creatures facing abandonment. He has proven that it is never too late to start over, and that every person, every creature, can find a second chance if they don't give up and still hold on to hope. Max, from an unknown dog in a shelter, has become a hero in the hearts of many, a symbol of the miraculous change that love can bring. And in every look Max gives, in each step he takes, people can see that hope can always be found, even in the darkest moments. Max has proven his worth not only through heroic actions, but through the transformation he has brought to all the creatures around him. After a long and emotional journey, Max, the dog who had once lived lonely days in the shelter, had now become a symbol of hope and change. He was no longer an anonymous animal, but a source of inspiration, proof that nothing is hopeless if we don't give up. On a special visit, Max returned to the shelter, the place where he had to wait for 6 long years, the place where, for the first time, in loneliness and despair, he had found a second chance. When Max stepped through the doors of the shelter once again, a different atmosphere enveloped the place. The dogs in the kennels were no longer just hopeless creatures waiting for a family. They looked at Max with different eyes, not with suspicion or sadness, but with admiration and belief. Max, from a dog no one cared about, was now a model of hope, a living proof to other dogs that you too can change your fate as long as you are patient and don't give up. Max entered, but this time he wasn't the lonely dog from before. He walked with a confident gait, gently wagging his tail like a victor returning from a long journey. The other dogs in the shelter looked at Max as a mirror, as a symbol. They looked at him not only because of the heroic stories Max had been through, but also because of the patience he had shown during the long waiting period. Every step Max took now was not just that of a dog, but of a hero, a friend, and most importantly, a teacher who showed them that hope is something that should never be left behind. Max stopped in front of the other dogs' kennels, not in a rush, but simply standing there, observing, understanding that these creatures also had hopes and dreams. They may not realize it yet, but Max knew that his presence was a reminder that, no matter how harsh life may be, there is always a road ahead. And that road will lead to second chances if we are patient and wait. A small dog in the shelter, with eyes full of fear and loneliness, couldn't take its eyes off Max. The dog's eyes reflected the emotions Max had once felt: fear, deprivation, and unspoken sorrow. But when looking at Max, the little dog seemed to feel something change within itself. It saw Max's patience and felt the hope he brought to dogs like it. Max didn't say a word, but just by being there, he taught the surrounding creatures a valuable lesson. Daniel stood next to Max, feeling the change in the atmosphere. He looked at the dogs who were looking at Max like a teacher, a role model. They will understand. They will know that, with patience, one day they will find their family, Daniel whispered. He knew this visit was not just Max's return, but the beginning of a new journey, a journey to help the dogs in the shelter find hope and find their family. Max was no longer the dog who had to wait in a kennel every day. He had proven that, no matter how tough life gets, one day, patience will be rewarded, and abandoned dogs will have a chance to be loved. Max had become a symbol of change, and from now on, every step he took would be a reminder to all the dogs in the shelter that nothing is impossible. This scene was not just a beautiful moment in Max's story, but a moment that clearly showed the transformation in the hearts of creatures who had lived in loneliness. They looked at Max with admiration, hope, and belief that, with patience and waiting, one day they too would find their family, just like Max. After returning to the shelter, where Max became a symbol of hope, the dog was not only regarded by other creatures as a teacher, but continued to inspire dogs that needed a chance. One day, while Max sat silently beside the temporary kennels, he stopped in front of a kennel where a pit bull named Benny was curled up in the corner, his eyes filled with skepticism and fear. This scene not only reminded Max of himself, but also marked an important turning point in his journey. Benny, although a strong dog, still reflected deep wounds from his past in his eyes. He couldn't forget the months of abandonment, the physical and emotional scars that no one understood. Every time someone approached, Benny shrank back, avoiding contact. He didn't trust anyone, even the kind-hearted visitors who came to the shelter. But when Max appeared, something changed in the air. Max, no longer the lonely dog from before, gently approached Benny. He wasn't in a hurry and wasn't trying to force anything. Max sat down, like a friend, doing nothing but sitting quietly and observing Benny. Max's gaze was not impatient or urging, but just a gentle presence, a silent message. "Don't worry, I understand you, I'm here." Max had learned that sometimes patience was the only way to soothe the pain others carry. Benny watched Max for a long time, motionless, but gradually he began to feel the warmth in Max's presence. He no longer saw a threat, but felt a sense of safety. Benny, though still skeptical, was no longer as fearful. His eyes no longer held panic, but instead a glimmer of light, a gentle curiosity. Benny slowly approached Max, lightly touching his body as a test, wanting to see if Max was truly a friend. Max, not retreating, gently licked Benny's paw, as if saying, "I'm not going to scare you. I won't abandon you." The pit bull remained silent, but now Benny's eyes slowly began to open. Max hadn't just befriended him. He had helped Benny feel safe, helped him dare to trust again in those around him. Every step Max took not only helped those humans who had been abandoned, but also helped dogs like Benny find themselves again and find trust in life. After a period of silence, Benny stepped closer to Max, no longer with fear or doubt. He began to lie down next to Max, and at that moment a deep connection was made between the two dogs. No words, no grand gestures, but all that Max did was sit quietly, patiently, and give Benny a new opportunity, a chance to start over. Daniel stood from a distance, observing this scene with a slight smile. He knew that, in a world full of pain and uncertainty, Max had changed not only his own life, but also the lives of other creatures. Max had not only saved himself, but had helped other dogs find hope, find a family, and most importantly, find trust in humans. Max and Benny didn't need to say much, but their actions spoke volumes. Max, from an abandoned dog, had now become a model of patience, a teacher helping other dogs, showing them that sometimes to find love, all it takes is perseverance and a heart ready to love. This story wasn't just about Max, but about the change that love and patience can bring. Max had helped Benny rediscover trust in life, and through that, he continued to prove that nothing is impossible as long as we don't give up. After Max helped Benny and became a symbol of hope in the shelter, a great idea began to form in Daniel and Emily's minds. They realized that Max's story was not just a simple tale of an abandoned dog, but a powerful reminder of love, patience, and change. The lessons Max had taught, not only to Benny but to all the dogs in the shelter, made Daniel and Emily understand that they needed to create a special space, a place where older dogs and abandoned dogs could live freely and rediscover hope. Thus, Max's Field was born, a place where Max, along with other dogs like Benny, could live a new life, no longer fearing abandonment, and no longer suffering through long days of loneliness in temporary kennels. Max was no longer just a dog who changed his own life, but now he had become an inspiration for a larger community, a place where love and patience would never be forgotten. Max's Field was not just a large plot of land, but a space full of love, where dogs who had carried the scars of abandonment could live freely and receive the care they deserved. Daniel and Emily did not just build a physical space, they created a community where love and empathy were the bonds that connected everyone. They poured their hearts, time, and care into creating Max's Field, a place where each dog was no longer judged by its past, but by the love it could bring to the world. When Max first stepped into Max's Field, it wasn't just the birth of a new space, but the moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter in the lives of abandoned dogs. Max, with eyes full of joy, ran freely across the field, as if he understood that this was the place he had always been searching for, a place where he didn't have to fear abandonment, where every step was filled with love and welcome. At that moment, Max became a living symbol of change, a model for all abandoned dogs and animal lovers worldwide. Max's Field was not just a space for Max, but for all the dogs in situations like his. Older dogs, abandoned dogs, could now live freely, play, and rediscover the joy they had lost. Whether they were old or injured, these dogs could find peace in this space, where love was the only thing given to them. Max, as the teacher and hero to all the dogs in Max's Field, became a model for those around him. The dogs here were not only nurtured physically, but also cared for emotionally. Every day, Max, along with Benny and other four-legged friends, was given a new opportunity, an opportunity they had never dared to dream of, the chance to live in unconditional love, to be their true selves without fear or hiding the scars of their past. Daniel and Emily had not only created Max's Field as a place to care for animals, but they had also created a powerful message of hope and healing. Max, from an abandoned dog, had become a living symbol of perseverance and unconditional love. Max's Field, where love for animals was truly manifested, was proof that a dog could change not only its life, but also a community, helping people realize the true value of love and patience. Max was no longer just the dog who helped other dogs in the shelter, but now he had become a living symbol of a larger movement, where abandoned dogs were no longer seen with pity, but with love and the care they truly deserved. And in his journey, Max had not only found a family, but also created a bigger family for his four-legged friends who needed love and shelter. After a long and emotional journey, Max fulfilled his mission, not only transforming the lives of abandoned dogs, but also building a community of compassion for animals. Max's Field, a sanctuary where senior and abandoned dogs could live freely and receive unconditional love, had become a living symbol of hope and transformation. But like every journey, no matter how beautiful, it eventually comes to an end. One afternoon, as the sun set and golden light spilled across the fields, Max lay beside Daniel on a soft blanket in Max's field. Though aged, Max still carried in his eyes a deep serenity, one that only a soul who had endured life's trials could possess. For Daniel, every moment with Max now felt more precious than ever. This dog had been with him through the hardest years, teaching him lessons of patience, loyalty, and unconditional love. Max spent the final years of his happy life, knowing he was loved, that he had a family, and that he belonged somewhere. But all things must pass, and on one peaceful evening, as a gentle breeze swept over the meadow, Max quietly left this world. There was no pain, no sound. He lay beside Daniel, a faithful companion to the end, and simply closed his eyes, breathing softly. Then he was gone. All that remained was a profound silence in Daniel's heart. But he knew Max had left behind an invaluable legacy, a legacy of love, patience, and sacrifice. Max had taught everyone that no matter how dark the past, no matter how abandoned we might feel, there is always hope. And more importantly, we can still give love, without asking for anything in return. Daniel sat beside Max in his final moment, gently stroking his head, as if to say, "Thank you," to say goodbye to a friend, a teacher he would never forget. His eyes were full of tears, but his heart overflowed with gratitude. "Thank you for everything, Max," he whispered. "Thank you for teaching me how to love, how to be patient, and how to never give up. You were the best friend I ever had." Though Max no longer moved, it was as if he was still there, with Daniel in his heart. Max's tail gave one last quiet wag, like a sign of contentment, a final farewell. No more words were needed. Max had spoken through every act, every quiet moment he shared with Daniel. Max lay peacefully in Daniel's arms, no longer hurried or anxious, only surrounded by perfect calm. It was a powerful moment no one could ever forget. His final breaths were like whispers, a reminder that though life may end, the love and lessons we leave behind will never fade. Max was gone, but his legacy lived on. That legacy wasn't just about heroic acts or charitable visits. It was about deep lessons in patience, loyalty, and unconditional love. Max had changed not just his own life, but touched the hearts of countless people and animals. And with his passing, a new chapter began, the story of his legacy, and what others would continue to do with the wisdom Max left behind. In Daniel's heart, and in the hearts of everyone Max had touched, he would live on, not just as a heroic dog, but as a symbol of hope and boundless love we can offer one another. After Max passed away peacefully, a part of the journey he had begun continued to unfold. His passing left a void in the hearts of those who had known him, but the legacy Max left behind never faded. As the days went by, Daniel began to receive heartfelt letters from the people Max had touched, from students in schools to the veterans Max had comforted, from patients clinging to hope in hospitals to the dogs of Max's field. Each letter Daniel opened was a story in itself, every word brimming with deep gratitude and emotion. In each line, the writers shared how Max had changed their lives, not just by bringing love, but by giving them hope for a better future, even after pain and loss. One letter came from a veteran named John, whom Max had helped through the darkest moments of PTSD. In the letter, John wrote, "Max wasn't just a dog. To me, he was the friend who gave me strength on my darkest days. For the first time, I felt heard without needing to speak. Max just sat beside me and looked at me with those sincere eyes, and I knew there was nothing to be afraid of anymore. Max saved me in ways I can never fully explain. I will never forget that heroic dog." Another letter came from a young girl named Lily, whom Max had met during a school visit. Lily wrote, "Max taught me that it's never too late to change. Before I met him, I believed good things never happened to people like me, people who feel forgotten. But Max showed me that even if you have to wait a long time, there's always hope. I'll never forget the lesson Max taught me, that love and patience can make miracles happen." There was also a letter from a woman named Rachel, who had found comfort in Max's hospital visits while battling a serious illness. Rachel wrote, "Every time I saw Max, I didn't just see a dog, I saw a friend. When I was facing my illness, Max gave me a reason to keep fighting. He didn't need to do much. Just being there beside me was enough. That was a kind of love I had never felt from anyone else. Max changed my life." Though the letters differed in words and stories, they all carried the same message. Max brought change, healing, and hope to so many. Though he was gone, what he had done continued to live on in the hearts of those he had touched. These letters weren't just expressions of thanks. They were proof of the extraordinary power of love and patience, not just for people, but for four-legged lives too. Daniel, reading those letters, couldn't hold back his tears. Each note was a testament to the impact Max had on the world. And though Max was no longer by his side, the love, patience, and loyalty Max had taught him would never fade. Sitting at his desk, Daniel laid the letters down and looked out the window, toward the field where Max used to run freely in Max's field. He knew that Max's journey, though finished, would continue through the stories in those letters. Max had left behind an immeasurable legacy, not just of heroism, but of hope, love, and patience. And with every letter, Max's legacy continued to ripple outward, reaching hearts still searching for light in the dark. After Max's passing, his legacy continued to live on in the hearts of those who had met and loved him, but especially within the very space he helped create, Max's Field. Founded by Daniel and Emily, Max's Field was not just a refuge for elderly and abandoned dogs, but a living symbol of transformation within the community. It wasn't merely a plot of land. It was a sanctuary filled with spiritual values, a place that nurtured love, patience, and hope, just like everything Max had brought to those fortunate enough to know him. Max's Field gradually became a destination for many dogs who had lost all hope, creatures that had spent too long in crowded kennels or been forgotten by society. But the moment they stepped into Max's Field, they were not just rescued physically, they found a true home, a place where they could run free across open meadows, feel the sun on their backs, and most importantly, learn to trust humans again. There were no rusty cages or cold walls here, only wide-open spaces where every dog could feel love and welcome. Max, with his unwavering patience and unconditional love, had become a living role model for all the dogs at Max's Field. These rescued souls were no longer pitiful animals, but free companions with the right to be loved and cared for. They began to look to Max as an older brother, the one who had shown them that no matter how painful the past, light could still be found at the end of the road. The community began to change as well. Max's Field became more than a place for dogs to find love. It became a space where people realized that compassion for animals is an essential part of life. Stories of Max sparked a wave of inspiration, not just among animal lovers, but throughout society. Max's Field became a gathering place where people learned and shared love, reaching out to those creatures who deserved never again to face abandonment or suffering. Visits to Max's Field, by volunteers, students, and families, became special occasions. They didn't just come to care for or play with the dogs. They came to rediscover something precious within themselves, empathy and understanding for beings they may never have noticed before. Max's story changed a generation, helping people realize that no living creature is unworthy of love, and that anyone can create lasting change if they give with love and patience. Each time Daniel watched the dogs playing joyfully under the sun, he couldn't help but think of Max, the dog who had changed not only his own life, but the lives of countless others. Max hadn't just rescued one soul. He had become a flame-lighting hope in the hearts of an entire community. The love Max left behind, carried forward in Max's Field, stood as undeniable proof of the transformative power of patience and unconditional love. The dogs that once bore the pain of abandonment were no longer just cared for. They became living symbols of hope. Max's field, with Daniel and Emily's care, became a place of healing not only for dogs, but for every soul who came to visit. And though Max was gone, his legacy lived on, not just in the fields, but in every story, every act of kindness the community continued to share. Max's field became a place where love and hope converged, a testament that even after pain and hardship, beautiful things await those who hold on to love. Max, though no longer with us, had left behind a priceless legacy, a place for dogs and people alike to heal, to find family, and above all, to believe in life again. The story of Max was never just about rescuing abandoned dogs or healing broken hearts. Max's legacy, built on lessons of patience, unconditional love, and selflessness, had truly changed the world. Max didn't just save himself, he saved countless lives, both animal and human. His story continued to be shared through every letter, every visit to Max's field, and every emotional moment he had gifted the world. Everyone who heard Max's story came to understand that it's never too late. No matter how long you've waited, how much you've been hurt or abandoned, you can still change. You can still make miracles happen. Max, once an abandoned shelter dog, had become a global symbol of loyalty and perseverance. And though he was no longer here, every act he had done, from helping dogs at Max's field to visiting schools and hospitals, stood as proof of love's power and the quiet strength of patience. Max was not just a heroic dog. He was a friend, a teacher, and an irreplaceable source of inspiration. The lessons he gave to Daniel, to Emily, and to all those who had met him would live forever in their hearts. And so, Max hadn't just changed the lives of abandoned dogs, he had transformed how people saw love, loyalty, and second chances. His story reminded us all that no matter the hardship, a loving and patient heart can always bring about change. In Max's final days, lying peacefully in Daniel's arms, the world seemed still. Max no longer felt loneliness. He no longer waited through endless shelter days. He had found family. He had found love. And when he finally passed, he did so in peace, knowing his life had meant something extraordinary. Daniel sat beside him, gently stroking his back, his eyes brimming with tears, but also with peace. Max didn't need to do anything more. What he had done for the world, for the animals and people around him, was enough. His story was not one of an ending, but of a legacy left behind. A legacy of love, patience, and the kind of change every one of us can bring into the world. Max proved that even from the lowest place, we can rise, and we can bring hope to others, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. As Max lay still in Daniel's embrace, his eyes soft and calm, it was as if he was saying goodbye, and thank you for a life well lived. Max was gone, but his legacy would live forever. His story would continue to be told. His love and patience would continue to be passed on. Max will always remain a living symbol of hope, loyalty, and the unconditional love we can give one another. Max changed the world, not with grand promises, but with simple, loving actions that anyone could do. And his legacy would live on, inspiring generations to come, reminding us that love can change everything, and that it's never too late to begin a new journey. The story of Max is not just the emotional journey of one abandoned dog. It is living proof of the miraculous power of love, patience, and hope. Max changed not just his own life, but the lives of so many others, both human and animal, restoring trust and healing hearts. His legacy will live on in our hearts as a reminder that it's never too late to change and to bring hope into the world. Do you believe one small act of kindness can change someone's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Max's story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and keep spreading love and hope in your life.